this was just a small particular feature where you're coming down. What time is this one?
Abbotsford.
Abbotsford. You come down to the end of a road. I should have shown you the original shots of these actually, now I'm thinking about this. And there's this kind of nice stone facade, but there's these huge signs, pointing you one way or another. And again, that's not alerting you to the fact that you're actually in a town, because when you turn the corner, you're right on the high street straight away. It keeps the driver in the mentality of looking ahead a long distance and reading signs, reading words and text and colour, rather than looking at the architecture and the details that are around it. So I thought, well, maybe we could have a glass front to this building with a small indentation in which we could put local craft objects. So it looks like a shop front and looks incredibly fragile. So if you came up too fast and carried on driving, you just smashed through this glass and broke all of this porcelain. And that would naturally slow people down. And then they'd turn the corner and their mentality would be changed. They'd be looking at smaller objects, thinking about people, thinking about architecture, and removing themselves from that process of reading the road in a kind of quite literal sense, reading the road and reading text. The other thing in terms of looking at lots of signs was that there was a lot of signs saying no entry here, don't do this, don't do that. And when you come from kind of pedagogical background, one thing you learn is never say no, because if you say don't spit, the first thing people do is spit, because they don't remember the word no, they just remember the adjective that's associated with it. I mean, how many people jump into swimming pools where they say don't jump into them? It's really an encouragement. So I started to think about, well, could we make all the signage in the area positive and none of it negative? So rather than no entry to cars, you have a little figure in the sea. So it's saying, yes, you can walk to the sea, and by implication, no, you can't drive down there, no, there's no parking. So there's a whole kind of linguistical project that needs to be undertaken to look at only positive signage and no negative signage. This is a proposal for a series of bus stops just following the kind of Jurassic ages through. So each bus stop would reference a particular era, and then the road itself would become the timeline that you're travelling through many hundreds of thousands of years. And the other thing is, where signage is still necessary, I thought, well, we could take it back to the pre-1950 signage, because Margaret Calvert, who designed most of our post-war signage, that developed that around the idea of fast transportation, so the motorway signs that you can read when you're going 30, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. When you look at signs that are pre-1950s, they were designed for people moving much slower, so there's more text. The iconography is much more difficult to read. And that's good for us, because we're trying to slow down people. So they'd have to slow and look at this. And obviously, just by the association, the kind of cliche of the sign, then you might think, okay, well, I'm going to go at a speed that's appropriate to, say, 1936 rather than 1986. This was just called a quiet, I think I called it a quiet tour, where we stopped all traffic in the area and allowed people just to walk on the road to listen to the birds. My dad lives in Bali in Indonesia, and there's one day a year where all motorized traffic is stopped. So there's no motorbikes, no planes, everything is stopped. And it's an amazing day, because then suddenly you hear all the wildlife, and the sound of planes and cars, no matter how rural you are, unless you're really, really in the depths of Scotland, the background noise of cars is kind of omnipresent, and you don't realise that until they're not there. I mean, even when there was the Icelandic volcanic ash spill, in London it was noticeably quieter because there was no air traffic in the sky. It's quite a strange thing. And this is an idea really based on a lot of European tram lines that have grass where the trams are. And I thought, well, it would be interesting to have to drive over grass before going into every village. So there'd be little track lines where you drive over and then the grass is embedded in the negative space. So you have this kind of carpet of grass at each entry, which I think would look quite attractive and is possibly realisable. A similar idea to the grass is to have, rather than putting the water under the road, that we put over the road. So you've got to drive through a small river to get into the towns that already have rivers at either side of them. Or a slightly more dramatic version, have fountains that erupt from the road as you drive through. And these could be on sensors, so they only erupt as you're driving towards them. And of course it cleans the bottom of your car quite nicely. And then, again, going back to the signs that you already have, I don't know if you can even see what I'm doing here, but you often end up with the backs of very large signs, and you have this huge kind of grey mass. And I thought, well, what would happen if you took a photograph of what you would see through that sign if that wasn't there, and then apply it to the back of that sign? So it's a kind of sign camouflage on the rear of the sign. Can you see that in that? Yeah. And then, I mean, I know they've taken out most of the centre lines to the roads. This would be an idea where you just have capsize and no centre lines. And then you've got the centre line when you need it at night, and you don't have it when you don't need it during the day. So in a way, it's a similar idea to the chevrons. And this is a sculpture of a picnicking family that we could move around to different sites, very near the roads. So being a very naturalistic, realistic family, small child, just about half a foot, looking like it's just about to run off. And then you just kind of, again, stick it on a van, pull it out, arbitrary parts of the road, and you get this kind of shock as you drive around. What the hell are they doing? And I'll just finish off with all of this discussion about signage and street furniture. A lot of it will be redundant in the next 5 years because with the kind of massive growth of GPS units, I kind of question the need for any signs at all. I think if all new cars and bicycles for that matter had built-in GPS units, then we wouldn't need any signs. So there's such a large investment into signage and things like controlling your speed, signs for controlling your speed. You think, well, maybe we should be giving away free GPS units instead, and we save money because these signs are all going to be redundant in the next, I would say, 5 years, pretty much. Everyone will have GPS, so why do we have all of these funny things sticking out of the ground anyhow? And I think that